Heat stroke, but yeah. Yes, earlier today, details were announced of plans to cut government spending by £6 billion this year.
Among the savings, the Child's Trust Fund is being scrapped. There'll be a ban on recruitment in the civil service, and some IT projects will not go ahead.
Well, even deeper cuts are expected, but instead of waiting for the axe to fall, maybe we could take matters into our own hands, as Simon Bozeman's been finding out.
It could be your library, your local swimming pool, or your community centre. These things could soon be torn out of your neighbourhood.
Although the politicians haven't spelt out where the cuts are going to take place, it's pretty clear that many of our local services are going to be under threat, and if we want them to stay open, we may have to take some very radical action.
Once upon a time, Hastings had a thriving pier, but sadly, those days are long gone. The pier here was closed 2 years ago, and the council couldn't afford to buy it off the company that owned it and bring it back to life. But the good folk of Hastings are a plucky lot, and they're not prepared to take this lying down. Angela Davis is a leading light of the local campaign, determined to get the pier owned and run by the community.
The main thing is it's such a cultural symbol of what Hastings is all about. It's really about the seaside holiday. We just think it's so important to bring this back. You know, it's so key to our seafront.
They're putting pressure on the council to buy the pier and then transfer it to their community-run trust. Then they'll run it themselves and restore it by trying to get their hands on any grants they can.
And what's your dream scenario then?
Well, our dream scenario really is to actually make it a destination so that people actually come down and visit. So obviously community-owned and managed by the community. And we really think we can inject some life back into this old girl, really.
Giving the old girl a shot in the arm is no easy task. Angela is devoting at least 30 hours a week to the cause while still holding down a day job.
If there are one-show viewers sitting at home, they've got a project they want to undertake, what kind of advice would you give them?
I think that the main thing really is to not underestimate the amount of work that will be required and the amount of dedication that will be needed. To get really a group of people together with as broad a base skills as possible.
Projects like this are part of David Cameron's idea for what's called a big society. He'd like to see us all running maybe our schools and our local services, but can a UK run by volunteers really work?
Absolutely, and actually all this did was...
Rob Whiteman thinks so. He's been given the job of helping councils in England and Wales cope with the coming cuts by handing over some services to local people to run.
We know that over the next 5 to 10 years money's going to be tight. What lies behind this proposal is that we start a conversation now with communities to say, are there services that you're interested in providing? Are there assets that you'd like to take over as a community?
Are you ready though for people to come up to you and say, look, you know, you're going to charge us probably more in tax this year. It's a bit cheeky that you're going to do that and then ask us to run our own services.
We're not trying to be cheeky. We're trying to be honest. Most of our money is spent on services, and that will continue. But some of the things that we do and some of the people that we employ, the balance of that will change, and the balance will be that more people do it on a voluntary basis.
So the policy guy thinks it's the answer, but are we really prepared to roll up our sleeves when the council or the government say they're pulling out? It's a big ask, surely.
Would you get up in the mornings and go and open your library up or go and open your leisure centre up?
Well, no, I've got enough to do as it is.
Should be down to the community to be supplied.
That's the reason you're paying the taxes, I would have thought.
Everything's been cut year by year, all budgets on everything, so perhaps it does come a time when they could ask the community.
I think it's finding time to contribute on a sort of long-term basis. I think it's quite challenging.
It may be a tall order, but across the country there are already places where people power is stepping in to save services. Here in prosperous Buckinghamshire, they did just that when the council said it no longer had the cash to keep the local library going.
They were considering closing 8 libraries. But what they did say was, look, we've come up with a scheme where you can remain part of the library network, so you can borrow books here, and as far as the users are concerned, it's exactly like any other library, but that you, if you ran it on your own, would have to cover all the costs yourself.
The local community rallied round with cash, books and, crucially, time. Now it's run entirely by volunteers, many of them retired. Without this goodwill, the chapter would be closed.
Do you think it was a bit cheeky of the local council to come to you and say, look, we don't want to do this anymore, we can't afford to, but if you want to open it, you do it?
Yes, I think we did, but it was one of those things that you know, you sort of bite your tongue if you want to keep the library open, and everybody said we did. That's what we had to do.
It might be tough, and as they're finding in Hastings, it isn't always easy. But if the politicians get their way, more of us may be left with no choice but to bite our tongues and get stuck in.
It is. It's all about getting stuck in, isn't it? I know you were involved with the